Most law firm owners think their next step is hiring another lawyer. Yet that single move is often the reason they stay trapped in a job. In today's episode, Ryan Mckeen breaks down the exact delegation and operating system shifts that turn a small firm into a real business that can grow without you.
Welcome to the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast, the show where law firm owners learn to build wealth, scale their firms, and design the life of freedom they deserve. Hosted by Darren Wurz, business and wealth advisor for law firm owners and author of The Lawyer Millionaire, this podcast delivers the strategies and inspiration you need to break free from the grind and become the financial success you envision. Let's dive in.
All right, and we're here with Ryan Mckeen. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hi, Darren. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited that you're here. I've been following you on LinkedIn for some time, and it was really great to be able to connect with you recently. So we're excited that you're here. I want to kick it off with an interesting question. You now are working with law firms and helping them run better businesses. So you've seen it, and you ran your own law business for many years. So if you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about how lawyers run their businesses, what would it be?
Wow, that's a great question. You know, I think what I would change is that they really, I would say, see their firms as businesses and approach their firms as businesses. And sort of like what I mean by that is law firms, I've worked with firms all over the world, all sorts of different practice areas, from firms that have, 1,000+ lawyers to one lawyer. And, sort of like the common issue is like if you went to many of these if you went to a local pizza restaurant, right, and you explained to the pizza shop owner how a law firm was run, they would look at you like, what? Like, why in the world would you do that? Like, how would you structure an organization like that? Like, this just doesn't make a ton of sense. And so on the smaller end of things, it could be owners doing everything. On the larger end of things, it could be how they serve, how people serve their clients, sort of like what the financial incentives are, what the product offerings are, how they think about what to invest in. For example, like investing in things like client experience, investing in things like technology, investing in things like culture. So it would really be to change that mindset and sort of meld the business world with really the practice of law.
Interesting. Do you see that most law firm owners still struggle with this and not seeing their business as a business?
Massively. There's much more acceptance than there was even 5-10 years ago about law firms being businesses. So that's like a healthy first step. But What I see is owners don't really know what that means. Like what they basically want is some better version of what they have. And a lot of times what they have is a job. And they sometimes have a job with some help. They sometimes have a job with a lot of help, but what they have is a job. And so they know that there are businessy things out there. They know that there are things that they can be doing. And sometimes they want to know what those things are because they don't know. And other times the challenge for them is implementing, is letting go, is changing the current structures that they have. I'm a big believer in like there are no sacred cows in life or business. And, there are certain things that you have to let go of to move forward. And I think law firm owners sort of struggle with that, right? Like they're like, hey, I don't know, eggplant grinder has always been really successful historically. It's grandma's recipe. We love the eggplant grinder. But, you start looking at the numbers, nobody's, one person a week orders it. You've got to buy $50 worth of eggplant to serve it. And it no longer makes a ton of sense maybe to do that kind of grinder. So it's really not only the acknowledgement of it, but it's the acceptance, the willing to change things that are hard to change, frankly. It's very hard to change firm culture. It's very hard to change financial compensation. It's very hard to, I think, get people to adapt to the level of technological change that's going on right now. And so a lot of resistance occurs where it's just like, you know what, I'm going to put my head down. Things may not be perfect, but they're okay. And I'm not going to, I think, make the changes that I need to be making.
Interesting. What are some of those key areas that make the difference when going from a job to a business? Is it data and actually measuring things? Is it that client experience? What's the thing?
Okay, so the thing, like data and client experience, like those to me are sort of spokes on a wheel, Darren. So the real thing to me is it is the ability to successfully delegate a whole bunch of things. So it is the systems, the technology, and the people required to level up your organization to do work that is not you. Like that is when you really have a business. When you have a business, it's when you can step away, money comes in, money goes out, things happen, the business grows, and you may not be involved in everything. You may be involved in one or two things, or you may be taking a step back entirely, but your business is still able to grow. So it really goes from the individual or maybe a small group of individuals to the proper processes, structures, technology, data, client experience that makes a business replicable that is separate from the people running it. Like that to me is the real distinction.
Yeah, the delegation, getting yourself out of it, that I have found is one of the biggest struggle points for a lot of law firm owners and most business owners, right? We've been doing everything for so long, it's hard to give things up. We think we're the best at it, and many times we're not. How do you help people go through that process and getting things off of their plate?
The very first thing is to start where you want to go. We have a book, The Way. Anybody listening, if you want to send me an email, I'll mail you a copy for free. We created it because we were working with firms and it was going to be an internal manual based upon our own experiences and based upon like the work we were doing with firms. At the firm, we were big believers in EOS. That is relatively complicated, hard to adopt, and a struggle, especially for law firms that are under $10 million a year in revenue. So we said, like, let's simplify this. And then once we had the process down, we're like, let's make it into a book so people can have it. So really and truly, being able to shift that mindset and understand where it is that you want to go. Otherwise, you just start doing either random acts of improvement or random acts of business, and you don't get the result that you want. So, a lot of it starts with me asking, the firm leadership or the firm owner, what do you want your life to be in 5 years? What do you want your business to look like? What are some examples of this in the market that you see? Who do you respect? What sounds good to you, both personally and personally? So when you can start getting clarity on that, then you can start really working backwards in terms of where you want to go and then how to get there and then who's going to get you there. And, a real common sort of struggle is that law firm owners or maybe lawyers, business owners in general, they can only see cost. So if they say, okay, I'm making $300,000 a year and I bring this person on at $50,000, then there's going to be $250,000. And it's like, well, no, if you bring that person on at $50,000, if you're doing it any sort of right, that should add $150,000 in income to your business. So you're at 3 and you should go to 450. So they do the very simple subtraction, but they never do the also simple, but maybe harder to accept sort of leap of faith addition to what a proper hire can do for a team and for a business. It's largely my belief that, businesses, the size of a business, the revenue of a business are a choice. Okay. And if you really want to get a bigger business and you want to get a higher gross number, you have to hire more people. Like there's no way around that. Yeah, and you have to do more marketing. You have to but those are really the only two investments that you can make. And both of those things require a leap of faith because you don't know what's going to happen when you hire somebody. You don't know what's going to happen when you undertake a new marketing venture. You can make some guesses, you can do your work, but ultimately, to me, the ones who really want to grow and succeed are the ones who are constantly taking action on those fronts.
Yeah, you've got to be forward-looking. It's very easy to be backward-looking and think, well, I don't have the money yet. And it's easy to do. I did this in my own business when I first started out. I just, projected linearly into the future how, revenue and everything was going to go. But what I didn't factor in is time and the fact that I only have so much time.
Yep.
So at a certain point, you reach your capacity. And this is a great topic because we just, in our masterclass series last quarter, we read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and the buyback ladder and the whole concept of getting more of your time back as the leader so that you can elevate and move to the next level in your business.
And a lot of this, Darren, comes from two things that I find. One of which is it comes from a lot of people having a middle class background, growing up middle class, and I certainly can relate. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked, did IT for a retail company in town. I mean, we had a good upbringing, but by no means rich. And a dollar spent was a dollar less that you had. And that's just the money lessons that I grew up with and internalized. And they're the money lessons that a lot of lawyers internalize. And it makes sense, right? And the other thing is law school. Law school really teaches a scarcity mindset, and it really creates risk aversion. So really and truly, it's like, it is the same thing, which is like if you hire an employee that's less money for you, is essentially the internalization of the message. And really what you have to do is you have to break through those things, understand why you think those things, identify the very legitimate risks and business concerns, and identify the things that you can do to avoid those things. So, those sorts of mindset issues, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a psychologist, but when I do consulting, I will often tell somebody, like, you may want to get a therapist and just talk about your feelings about money.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. There really is something there where, there is an a misunderstanding about investing and how you can create more revenue by investing in your business. It's not about like just I'm going out and I'm making money. And I think maybe maybe a lot of this comes from just the way law firms have been run for a long, long, long time. I never really understood the business of like a big law firm. It's traditionally it's a collection of lawyers. You have a whole bunch of lawyers and they do the legal work. But there's no hierarchical structure other than some people are partners and some people are associates. Nothing like a normal business where you have a CEO, you have a board, you have a COO, you have kind of these leadership positions. It's just you have a collection of lawyers and they do everything and they get together and they make the decisions. So Do you think maybe that kind of plays into it and how people kind of approach starting a law firm?
No, zero question. There's zero question in my mind, and this gets back to sort of like if you told your local pizza shop guy, how or woman how you run your firm, they're gonna go. So basically, like every server is like its own business, and like you're kind of competing with each other. And wait a minute, like the servers and the cooks run the whole restaurant and nobody's really in charge. But you're right. A lot of law firms are collections of lawyers held together by commercial leases. Like that's what it is. And that is not the most profitable, efficient, or effective way to run a business. A business should be focused, should have processes and systems in place to serve that focus or that mission, should have people in place, and should have decision making that is not decision making by committee. I'm a big sports fan, and you have to have hierarchical decision making. The offensive coordinator has to be the one on the football field who calls the offensive plays. Otherwise, you don't need one. You don't get all the players on the sideline going, you know what, I think we should do I think we should do a draw here. No, we should do a play action pass. Like you can't do that. You can't move effectively and efficiently. Ultimately, You need people knowing their roles, in their roles, able to succeed, making decisions on behalf of the team and communicating those decisions to the people whose job it is to execute them.
Yeah, I love that. I love that analogy too of the sports team. And everyone having their role. What I have seen is one of the biggest mistakes in hiring for like solo practices is the first person they want to go out and hire is another attorney.
Yes.
Tell us why that's a mistake.
On every level, on every level that is a mistake. Okay. First of all, attorneys are the most expensive hires most law firms will make. So that is thing number one. Dan Martell's book on Buy Back Your Time is a very good book that makes this point, which is like, if you want to make money, you need to downwardly delegate tasks to people who make less than you. And this is so intuitive, where, look, a lot of lawyers in my area, they'll bill $500-600 an hour, and yet they'll take their time, answering phones, which is a task that you could get done for maybe $25 an hour, or doing books, similar thing, or, like they get caught up in those smaller tasks. I'm like, you understand that hour you spent doing books cost you $475. Would you pay $475 for that? Look, when you're first starting out, it's okay because maybe you have more time than money. Okay. But quickly you need to downwardly delegate and shift those things. So your first hires should be people who are making less than you. Lawyers are difficult to compensate, want high compensation models. And also, they're not generally going to take a ton off your plate, because you may be busy and they may have their own work. Again, that can help alleviate some costs maybe in terms of a rental income. But, to me, your first hires really should be in any practice area, an assistant, a paralegal, a receptionist, somebody in the office who can scan the mail, answer the phones, do some light bookkeeping, administrative tasks, call some clients. That's going to get you a lot further than hiring a lawyer. And that's true in really, almost any practice area. I could imagine the exception being that you have a criminal defense firm, which has high volume, that requires a lot of court appearances. Well, then, okay, maybe you do need another lawyer for that if you've got the call volume and you've got the court dates. But in general, most of the time, that is a giant mistake.
Absolutely. I love all of that. And thank you for telling us about that, Ryan. it's so critical for law firms to understand. Let's dig a little bit deeper into the specifics. You mentioned your book, The Way, and that you have made some tweaks to the EOS process to make it a little bit more friendly, perhaps, for solo and small firm attorneys. Without giving too much away, can you tell us what are some of those adaptations? How do you make it easier?
I'll give everything away. I mean, I give the book away for
free.
So I mean, part of what EOS does, and it's such a smart book. One of my favorite books. Traction's one of my favorite books. Read it. Where it really establishes the idea that businesses need operating systems, which, our phones need operating systems, our computers need operating systems, courts need operating systems, procedures in place as to how the thing functions in general, how the organization functions, right? And, Traction really spends a lot of time talking about visionary and integrator relationship. And look, I had that at the firm. I mean, we grew to about 40 people. I had a professional COO, with an MBA and 25 years experience and a host of things, right? And that was awesome. But our revenues were close to 8 figures by the time I was doing that, but that's very unattainable for many, many firms that are out there. So they either don't have the person or they stick the wrong person in the role. And really what Traction also envisions are, in key terms, a 10-year vision. And it also envisions really director level people. And it is so hard if you are under $5 million in revenue to have legit director level people in non-production capacity. So director of marketing, director of, operations, director of finance, those kinds of positions that are very valuable. So what we saw is teams really had, and we say it's really good for firms that are under 10 million in revenue, gross revenue, because what we talk about is it's not a 10-year vision, it's a 5-year destination. Really, vision becomes a squishy word for lawyers. Like, they just don't do well. We're language people, and it's like vision that just I don't know what that is. But if I say, look, like, you have to think about your firm like you're planning a vacation. Oh, okay. So I use an example like, hey, you're going to go to Iceland. You may go to Iceland or you may go to Costa Rica. They're both fabulous places. For your listeners, I love both of those countries. Go to them. They are very different places. You need to pack differently. You need to expect different things. There is different language. There, just a host of different things that need that you're going to need to plan for. So we do a 5-year destination. We don't talk about directors, but we really talk about, who are your ride or dies on your organization? Who are the critical people? Because, when you're super small, it may be your paralegal. That is sort of your leadership team for your firm.
Right.
And then we really, they talk about 90-minute weekly meetings. We shorten them to 30 minutes. And it's smaller tweaks like that to make it easier and make it something that firms can self-implement on their own, which they do. And, that's how we run our consulting company. The firms that do this see great growth. So it's sort of like, an EOS Lite where, there are some important tweaks. I'd say a lot of the fundamental principles are the same. Some of it is a little bit tailored to law firms in terms of KPIs. But it's really important that you, whether it's our book or EOS or, scaling up or, some of these other ideas that are out there, putting an operating system in place, even if you're a solo, I think is really, really important.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. I love that because, you're right. EOS is a lot. It can be a lot to implement. You may not need, if you're a 3-person team, might not need a 90-minute weekly meeting. That might be way too much.
Way too much.
Yeah. And 5 years, that's great because When you're small and you're just starting out, 10 years, you can't even envision 10 years, but
No.
5 years makes it a lot more tangible. So that's really cool. I love that. And we will link that in the show notes for anybody who's interested and want to check out Ryan's book. We'll put that in the show notes for you. Ryan, you gave us a little bit of a sneak peek of your history. Tell us a little bit more about how you came into the business that you're in now. How did you get there?
Yeah. Few things. I like to think of my career sort of in terms of 10-year blocks. And so really the first 10 years I spent an enormous amount of time trying to figure out how to be a lawyer. And really invested a lot of energy into trying to just become the best lawyer that I could. But I hit the ceiling with that in terms of what I could do, what I could earn, the kind of life I wanted to have, just in terms of being able to create things. And I'd say the second 10 years, I really focused on business and developing myself in terms of how do I run a good business? How do I grow a business? How do I do these kinds of things? And I mean, look, I had hundreds of cases when I was at Connecticut trial firm. I was a trial counsel and counsel for 5 years on a case that got $100 million jury verdict, the highest in the Connecticut history. So like, it wasn't like I was divorced from that process. I was involved in it heavily. But I was getting more into the business side of the thing as the firm grew. And ultimately, I ended up still am in a significant dispute with my former business partner, which, I was just like, this is not working for me ultimately, and decided to get bought out of the firm and ended up starting a consulting company, because it was like I had a chance in my life to say, what is it that I want to do? And it was like, I really am excited by teaching. I was doing work for Lawyerist as a coach. I love speaking. I was just engaged in more of this activity, and I really, really liked it. I also love the practice of law. So I have a small law firm as well, where I take cases, I work them, I work closely with my clients, and I love helping out my clients in that way. That's sort of the long and short of how I ended up where I am. So I took 5 people from my firm with me, and we, from having no clients, nothing, started a Best Era, a consulting company for law firms.
That's so cool. Yeah, kind of the opposite of my journey. I started out as a teacher, teaching 8th and 9th grade science, and then became a financial advisor, and then my journey continued from there. But I always loved teaching, and maybe one day I'll return to it in some form.
Darren, it's interesting. I went to college to be a teacher, and in fact, I went to Framingham State University, which is the first teachers college in the U.S., first normal school in the U.S., founded by Horace Mann, for all you education fans out there. And I decided, when I was there, I'm like, I just don't think I'm going to be satisfied teaching. Like the classroom felt too small for what I wanted to do. And so I decided to go into law school and help people using my law degree. And to sort of come full circle, now I'm an adjunct professor at University of Connecticut School of Law, teaching legal entrepreneurship. So I took a very a very long, winding road to end up teaching. So I teach in the falls at UConn Law.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I want to ask you a few more questions. I know you probably read a lot of books. We talked about your book. We have a masterclass here at the Lawyer Millionaire where we read one book a quarter. We mentioned Buy Back Your Time was the last one. Right now we're reading A Random Walk Down Wall Street, which is just a really fascinating book. It's a timeless classic, but it was actually recently updated. So it talks about some of the most recent things that have happened in the markets, like the meme stocks and things like that. And One of the things that have taken away from the beginning of the book, they take you through a history of markets and the biggest bubbles that have happened all the way back to the tulip craze in the 1600s. And what you realize is that human psychology really stays the same. And while history may not repeat itself, it certainly does rhyme.
Yes, it does.
A lot of the same things tend to happen over and over again, and a lot of the same mistakes, which is really quite interesting. Now, I was trying to think, how we can apply this to law firms and business. One of the things I was thinking is it's easy to kind of get swept up into trends and things that everyone else is doing. Well, everyone else is doing this. I think I need to do that too, instead of really relying on the tried and true. There's some tried and true things that work really, really well in business. What are some of those from your perspective?
Yeah.
Are there any trends right now that people are just getting caught up in too much that maybe people need to return to basics?
Yep. Yes and yes. So, look, our company name Best Era is a riff on Taylor Swift. There are some things that never go out of style. To me, that is client service. It's client service. You talk about books. One of my favorite books is Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. Will is actually going to be speaking online to my law school. I reached out to him and I assigned this book to my class, and he's going to be talking to them. But I think, two things. One of which is if you can really, people talk about brand and they think it's a logo or they think it's colors or they think it's some shit. Oops, I don't know if I can swear on your podcast. They think it's something. So they think it's something, but really your brand is your reputation. Okay. And so back to being sort of a restaurant, same thing applies to law. One, you should have a good product. Like if your pizza is really good, you got something. You've got half of what you need. The second thing is the experience. Service is what you do, and hospitality, which Guidara makes the point, is how you make people feel. So if you are good at what you do and you treat people really well, if you're in a service-based business, which all lawyers are, you're going to do very well for yourself. Regardless of, whether or not you go to a seminar and somebody's like, you should be doing TikTok videos or, you should really be on Sora or like that, fine. That's okay. You can be there. But really and truly, back to Taylor, it is the excellence in service and the excellence in hospitality that is going to grow your business in ways that I think are sustainable. That's never going to go out of style. And also boring stuff is not going to go out of style. And what I mean by that is AI is very exciting and I love AI and I write about AI and I teach about AI. Very, very exciting. Kind of boring is something like EOS. Meetings and goals and writing things down. But those sort of boring fundamentals, what I call the blocking and tackling of business, focusing on those things is very, very important. And also focusing on your people. Because if you focus on your clients and you focus on your team, you're going to do really, really, really well, almost regardless of what else is going on in the world. So treating your people well, making sure they have the training that they need to do their jobs, making sure that they know what's expected of them, making sure that they share your vision and your values. Those things are very, 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 very important. And also too, like when you see trends and this and that, the data also just does not lie. And everything that you talked about is irrational exuberance, essentially. People get all in on a meme coin, and they get all in on, baseball cards, or like it's a mania is really what it is. But if you're smart and you take a step back and you're like, this doesn't make sense. And if you read a book like, The Big Short or something, like there are people who look at things like rationally, like, hey, I know everybody's putting their money in this stuff, but my God, what are they doing? And sort of having the confidence to take a counter approach.
Yeah, those are great lessons. There was one of the things I've noticed is that most of these bubbles happen around some kind of new technology or new opportunity that exists. In the 60s, it was the electronics boom. It was the space age. Anything tronics was the thing. In the 90s, it was the dot-com bubble. Anything .com, was the next big thing. In fact, in the 80s, there was a bubble in the 80s and the roaring 80s. There was a company called Androbots, and this was a sign of the times, right? They had no profit, they had no revenue, they had no dividends to return to shareholders, but they had the promise that they were going to put a personal robot in everybody's home. This was back in the 80s.
Right.
And people bought it up and they loved it, right? And of course it was full of hot air, So that kind of stuff is just fun. But it goes to your point, right? Where the hot, flashy stuff is cool and maybe it's helpful and there's tools out there that can help you, but really executing on the basics is the recipe for long-term success and a business that's going to sustain, right? Not a business that's going to be bright and flashy and then burn out, but a business that's going to be around a long time from now.
Right. I'm a big football fan, and I sometimes don't speak in sports analogies because I know not everybody is. But in football, you've got different players. Your wide receivers catch the ball, your quarterbacks throw the ball, your running backs are the ones who, get handed the ball, and so the least sort of sexy positions on the field are your linemen, your offensive and defensive linemen. But if you talk to any football coach, if I said to you, if you can win the battle at the line of scrimmage every single game, forget who the wide receiver is, forget who the quarterback is, you're going to have a real good chance to win that game and to be a very good team. Unless you're, but you, and I feel like with law firms, like, okay, I know you want the flashy wide receiver. Let's focus on getting that line of scrimmage. We're going to get, the big nasty guys on both sides of that ball who are going to push the other side backwards, create opportunity, and you're going to do a lot better. And I think, firms sometimes draft like poor sports teams where it's like, hey, let's go get the fast wide receiver, but it's like you're getting pushed around on the line of scrimmage. Your quarterback can't get the ball out,
What do they say? Offense wins games, defense wins championships, or something like that?
Yep. Right.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Well, Ryan, it's been fabulous having you on the show. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience? And can you tell our audience where they can go to learn more about you?
The best place to learn anything more about me is LinkedIn. You can find me, friend me, send me a DM on LinkedIn. That's a great way to get in touch with me. I usually try to write something about the business of law or the practice of law every single day. I do respond to my DMs. If you try to spam me, I will respond saying that I already have a girlfriend as my generic response for LinkedIn spam. But if you're generally reaching out, I will respond to you almost certainly. That's a great place to find me, or bestera.com as well. Check out what we're doing, events, offerings, things like that. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Ryan, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Darren.
Are you a law firm owner looking to build real wealth and break free from the daily grind? On the Lawyer Millionaire Podcast, we share practical strategies to grow your practice, maximize profits, and create the financial freedom you deserve. Join host Darren Wurz as he interviews top experts and successful law firm leaders who share their secrets. Don't just practice law, build a legacy. Listen now to the Lawyer Millionaire wherever you get your podcast. The Lawyer Millionaire Podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as legal, tax, or investment advice. Listeners should consult with a qualified professional before making any financial or business decisions. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of Darren Wurz or Lawyer Millionaire Wealth Advisors.